dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't go.
Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you, Rob?
I'm also doing great. I'm excited for the upcoming cinematic event of the century.
It's more of an experience than a movie.
Yeah, the thing that is really gonna change things for us nerds, really turn things around. You know, they're not gonna be looking down on us in the cafeteria anymore. They're not gonna be kicking sand in our faces at the beach. No, we have a big blockbuster movie starring beloved handsome older man Chris Pine and several other people.
Yeah.
And it's the D&D movie. It's Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves, and this is Dungeon Master of None, and we're going to talk about it.
And Rob, I think this is going to be okay, there are two possibilities, Rob. One, this is I think both of them bad, so let me know what you think. One, this is the like high watermark of Dungeons and Dragons and pop culture. Basically, every august magazine and institution, from NPR to the New York Times, has run a piece about how D&D is cool. And so, yes, this will be the high watermark of how cool D&D is, and it will then slowly fade as some other property, brand, hobby replaces it. So that's option one.
Okay.
Option two is that Dungeons and Dragons brand, culture, lifestyle gets incorporated into the mass pop culture, a la comic book movies, and then for the next 20 years, we're living in a time of this just being part of the main zeitgeist.
I am inclined to agree with you that those are really the only two outcomes. It's interesting to me. I want to address the second one in a moment, but it's interesting to me that this is coming out now, and it's good. But like as we've discussed at length, D&D started to see a pop culture resurgence a decade ago, right? It was Stranger Things, it was Critical Role, it was on Community, right? People started to really like get exposed to D&D. So it's funny. Not funny, haha, that, it took Wizards and Hasbro and their various branding marketing departments, 10 years to get, this movie off the ground. But I guess better late than never. And I think that, like you said, there's a good chance that they've missed the wave and this is as good as it gets.
Right.
This is the most popular and coolest D&D will ever be, and it only gets worse from here on out.
In an analogy that I think Dungeon Masters would understand, like making a blockbuster movie is like building a medieval castle or something. And by the time that you've actually like built the first wall, you don't need a castle in that part of the world, county, lands anymore, right? The edge of the wild or the raiders has moved on. But anyway, you're still building the castle.
Right. Yeah. Or even better, by the time you actually like finish the castle, cannons have advanced to the point where your walls are useless, but you got to finish the walls anyway, because otherwise you just got half a castle. I do think that the second one is more likely. The reviews for this, early reviews seem to be good, and I gotta say, based on what I've seen, it looks like it might not suck, which is good. But here's the thing, and we've talked about this at length. I think that Hasbro, and to a lesser extent Wizards of the Coast, would love it if D&D just kind of became a culture brand zeitgeist thingy, right? If they just made movies and TV shows and Funko Pops and whatever. I have mentioned this at length, and this is what I believe that they want. And I already feel like the actual game itself is atrophying as they release board games and tie-ins and movies and TV shows.
It's because all of these things have a better return than the game itself, right? They're
precisely. And I, in one sense, of course, this is incredibly depressing, but I have not been pleased with the direction of the actual tabletop game for a while, and I this might be good, right? This might actually I mean, here's the optimistic take, right? Is that this would liberate Dungeons and Dragons from being the cornerstone TTRPG and let people who actually care about TTRPGs make role-playing games. And Dungeons and Dragons can just be a brand that makes movies and action figures and, I don't know, body pillows or whatever.
Well, it's kind of like we say in the South. It's like, you want something to drink. You want a Coke? Okay. What kind? Well, I'd like a Dr.
right, yeah.
Pepper, actually. Yeah. Coke is just
exactly right.
It's just it's the Frisbee, the Kleenex.
Yeah, the Xerox. I mean, we've seen this coming, and I feel like, this has always been the case. And I to be clear, I'm not like delighted by this outcome, but I think that you have correctly identified the two possible outcomes of this movie, and neither of them are particularly thrilling, but this is the world that we live in. So,
well, it's hurrah! It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Let's dive into it.
We've talked a lot about it, and it's gonna be kind of D&D movie heavy. These few weeks as it comes out, and we'll probably review the movie itself. But genuinely, it has created a lot of what I consider to be very interesting content, and I hope you don't mind us discussing it, because some of this it does tie into sort of the game as a whole. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is a few weeks ago on D&D Beyond, they released a set of character sheets, I guess, or character builds for the main cast of the Dungeons and Dragons movie. And this is, as I like to say, a rich text.
Yeah. It's entitled on D&D Beyond, if you want to look it up, The Thieves Gallery for Honor Among Thieves. Quote, a handful of characters from the film Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, are presented here as NPCs you can include in your D&D campaigns.
This is very, very interesting. And there are 6 characters included here. I feel like this might constitute spoilers, perhaps,
yeah.
But not really. I don't know that there's anything that we're being told here that you can't necessarily tell from the trailers. But I guess if you want to go in completely blind to the D&D movie, stop listening for now. But this is just describing the characters.
I wouldn't worry about it too much. This absolutely seems like the type of film where it's like, all right, the trailer's going to reveal a lot. There's going to be 7 trailers. Who cares? I can't imagine caring about spoilers for this. There are 7 stat sheets here. 5 heroes and 2 villains.
7. Oh, that's right. Oh, very exciting. That's right. We got our villains too. So yeah, so we've got Doric, the druid.
Doric the Exploric.
There's Doric the Exploric, the druid, played by Sophia Lillis. There is Edgin Darvis. I'm sorry, this is not like a funny name, but there's just like something about Edgin Darvis that like makes me laugh every time I see it. It's like somebody was trying to say a different name and like fumbled it. But this is
it's like Edgar Davis, and they said Edgin Darvis. They had a 6th grader write the name down. Actually, not a bad approach to fantasy name generation. Just find a 6th grader, hopefully one that won't be weirded out by you approaching them, and be like, all right, listen, I'm going to say some normal, English names, and I want you to write them down as best as you hear them.
So we've got Edgin Darvis, Chris Pine's Bard. Mm-hmm. We've got Forge Fitzwilliam, which
that's
is
a dwarf, right? Forge Fitzwilliam.
It's one would think so, but no. This is a guy, just some dude, played by Hugh Grant. I mean, he should be dwarf, right? But I don't think he is a dwarf.
Okay.
There's no indication that he is a dwarf, but who knows? It just says humanoid.
Yeah. He looks like a human.
What's supposed to do with this? It looks like a human. He doesn't have a beard or anything. There is Holga Kilgore, played by Michelle Rodriguez. Whatever happened to, what's the deal with Michelle Rodriguez's career? Like, why isn't she in more stuff? I guess she's just coasting on that Fast and the Furious movie.
Yeah. That's more than enough, I think.
There's Simon Almar, played by what's his name, Justice Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And this is I'm sure not a spoiler, but I did not know this. He's the descendant of the legendary wizard Elminster Almar. That's cool, right? That's a tie-in.
I liked Justice Smith in Detective Pikachu. I have to say his character was very forgettable in one of the Jurassic Park movies. I was like, oh man,
sorry. I've been like tearing my hair out trying to remember like what I've seen that he's in, and he was in one of the Jurassic Park movies, but he was good in Detective Pikachu. Yeah. Let's see. There's Sophina, who is a red wizard of Thay, played by Daisy Head, and then there is Zenk Yendar, played by handsome heartthrob Renee Jean Page, So that's 7 stat blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, do you want to read the there's just like a little brief introduction, but will you read the bit under unusual attacks and magic before we dive into the stat blocks themselves?
Some creatures have weapons that deal unusual damage types and spellcasting that functions in an atypical way. For example, Forge Fitzwilliams deals extra poison damage with his heavy crossbow. This extra damage isn't a feature of the weapon. Such an exception is a special feature of the stat block and represents how the creature uses its weapon or casts its spells. The exception has no effect on how a weapon or spell functions for a different creature. It felt like a little bit of circular logic there. I don't really know what the hell's going on.
So, tuck that away for the future, because I have some thoughts about it.
Okay.
And it's going to come up in every single one of these stat blocks. But let's start with Doric the Explorer, a tiefling druid,
a tiefling raised by wood elves in Neverwinter Wood.
Yep.
A Circle of the Moon druid, and then we have her monster manual NPC stat block. It also mentions she is part of the Emerald Enclave, one of our favorite factions.
Oh, that's right.
From Neverwinter, from the Forgotten Realms.
Do like Emerald Enclave. So she appears to be a somethingeth level. Actually, I realize now that I actually can't be sure exactly what level of druid that she is.
I don't think she has any spells above first level, but these are NPC stat blocks, so they can be really anything. I mean, she has 100 hit points and 16
well,
hit
that's
dice.
The thing, right?
Yeah.
And she can change shape 5 times a day, but yeah, she doesn't have any spells higher than
second
level.
I guess Beast Sense is second level. Not a very powerful.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, but that is second level.
Okay, she's definitely a tiefling.
Well, okay.
She has the Fiery Rebuke action.
Yep.
Which we all know and love.
I'm curious to see if we'll see that used in the movie. I would enjoy that, but that might be interesting.
One of the interesting things about the art and her sort of equipment / attacks is she has a sling, but it's more like a sling. It looks like a slingshot, or that's the only way I could imagine it being used. Built into a bracer on her arm, which is kind of like a cool visual thing. I noticed the sling does 2d4 damage, and I'm pretty sure regular slings do 1d4 damage. So she's got an uber sling that's also a slingshot. So,
which is pretty cool. There's no reason why you or your players could not reflavor a sling as a nifty steampunk bracer slingshot. So, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. There is one thing, of course, that is notable about Doric's stat block, and that has to do with change shape. And it is that Doric magically transforms into a beast with a challenge rating of 3 or less, or into an owlbear. We have seen this happen. This was part of like the very first like teaser trailer. Real D&D heads will know that you can't shape change into an owlbear. What do we think about this, Matt?
Well, I mean, it's always been ridiculous that, what the exact limits of shape change are. Like, players are always like, well, I want to be a dragon, right? Or I want to be something cool
Right.
like an owlbear or a bulette or an otyug. And you're like, all right, actually, you're stuck to like wolf and giant, but also things that in our world are already like fantastical, like a giant eagle, dire wolf. In the end, the coolest things that you can rules is written for most versions of the druid that you can turn into are dinosaurs, right?
Well, and previous editions addressed this by having either prestige classes or subclasses or some sort of specialization that you could do. So if you wanted to be a druid that shape changed into draconic creatures or into magical beasts or into like a treant or something,
a centipede or something,
yeah, that was an option, and it was limiting, but it was kind of cool. Like if you were a druid who wanted to really like your favored shape was a dragon or a magical beast, a bulette, you could specialize into that, but that's not an option in 5th edition, and I think that's kind of a bummer because, as Matt has pointed out, there's not anything like better about shape changing into an owlbear. Like that's less powerful than several animal forms, and it's not any more fantastical than a giant eagle. And this is one of the major limitations of the druid class in 5th edition. But this sort of like gets to what I was not so subtly hinting at with that first paragraph, is that all of these stat blocks we're going to see have little bonuses, little things added to them that aren't, in my opinion, mechanically like super overpowered. Like even giving a sling extra damage is not, I don't think that's particularly a big
2d4.
But these are things that are not permissible in D&D rules as written, right? And I think that this is going to I think this is going to create some tension with new players and old. I think that, I don't think that it's weird that the D&D movie is making their main characters like a little bit more interesting, but I think that it is a problem that you can't really do it in the base game. Like there's like literally not even like options. Like if you were trying to build any of these characters in a different setting, like you could make, or a different system, you could make sacrifices or specialize in one way or another to allow for these things, but it's literally not possible in 5th edition, which is I think it's really highlighting a weakness of the system.
Yeah, I think one of the things about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or really most editions of Dungeons & Dragons and its clones, is it's not a very cinematic role-playing game, right? Compared to, there are systems structured to be as cinema, right? And so if you're translating this into the silver platinum screen, it's gonna be not as satisfying, right? We just watched a movie that takes a lot of D&D very literally, and it's of course not very cinematic. One thing that I wrote down when we watched the old D&D movie, the DVD one, that we didn't end up talking about was how Rob, have you seen the like Critical Role animated series? I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've watched a couple episodes.
Just a couple episodes, yeah.
Right. It's like, to translate, Pathfinder or D&D 5e characters to something, again, more cinematic, like you've got to take a lot of liberties to really, lean into what makes watching a movie or a TV show exciting. Like the characters in whatever it's called, the Vox Machina show, like all kind of have more or less like superpowers, right? The cleric doesn't sit there and cast cleric spells. The cleric summons armor and then like weapons and shields of whatever shape they can imagine. Like made of light, like shields made of light. The druid has just unlimited entangling root tentacles that they can use to do whatever they want, right? It's like a flexible system.
Right.
Or I'm going to use these tentacles to throw someone or grapple or make a cushion for my landing or something like that.
Right. Well, and not to get too off track, but like, you know, not every game has to be a movie or cinematic or map onto that, but it D&D also doesn't work particularly well as a even like a novel, or really as a narrative at all, unless you take some like serious creative liberties. Like it's not, because I my opinion increasingly is that because the roots are so deeply embedded in tactical wargaming, it's pretty hard to, not pretty hard, it requires a lot of extra effort to wrangle it into a narrative form. And one of the ways where I think this becomes most apparent is when they try to make it into a movie or a TV show, because you really have to do a bunch of changes to make it make sense.
Well, here's something I think that's illustrated by our next stat block by Edgin Darvis. This is Chris Pine's Bard character. Right. And we look at the stat block, and, you know, it's a typical like NPC bard. They have a inspiring words ability, a sort of a debuff bard music ability, and then some basic spell casting, right? Charm person, suggestion, disguise self, message, etc. I will be incredibly surprised, Rob, if in the movie we see this character actually cast a spell, right? Because, you know, if you like present players like, okay, here's a bard, they're good at coordinating their allies and making plans, you know, to the casual movie viewer having, well, this person can also do magic that could be almost anything. It's hard to translate that, if you get what I'm saying.
It's confusing. I mean, the bard has always been like a messy package of abilities, but it, you know, a charming rogue who plays music and helps coordinate its allies, that kind of makes sense. But then also they cast spells using music, maybe is a little, it's just like a little hard to present. It doesn't make a ton of sense. This is neither here nor there, but I have noticed that all of these stat blocks, their stats are very high. I haven't done the math, but they seem entirely too high.
Well, if your characters had rolled better, they would get a movie made after them. Obviously, these are the characters who have rolled the best 46 drop one in the entire history of the Forgotten Realms, and so that's why they're in the movie.
That's a good point. These are certainly not point buy characters. These are the cream of the crop. Anything else we want to say about Edgin Darvis?
He only speaks common. That's, you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. He's a bard. Why does he not have any other languages? This is nonsense. Yeah. What the hell? Other than that, he seems like a pretty standard high-ish level bard.
It's noted that he was once a member of the Harpers.
That's right. I wonder if that's going to come into the movie. Probably briefly. This one's pretty straightforward, actually. I don't see anything too unusual. So let's talk about Forge Fitzwilliam, who's some kind of, well, he's a rogue. He's a rogue of some sort.
Right. This is Hugh Grant's character. He looks like a sleazy used car salesman rogue, which is absolutely great.
Yeah, I love him.
I mean, if I had to guess, this seems like his stat block is listed as neutral evil. This seems like a villain that gets things started, but is not actually the big world-ending threat.
No, I'm pretty sure our big villain is Sophina, the Red Wizard of Thay. I'm curious what role Forge Fitzwilliam plays. As mentioned in the opening paragraph, he's got a heavy crossbow that, you know, it does 1d10 plus 2 plus 7d6 poison damage. Yikes! That's a
holy
huge,
shit!
Like amount of bonus poison damage.
It's like you also get hit with a
Jesus.
fireball of poison.
Which is, that's cool. That's handy. That's probably a good thing to have on hand. I wish that my rogue could somehow add 7d6 poison damage to his crossbow.
I also love the
Works for
ability
me.
Disarming Charm. While Forge isn't wearing armor, his AC includes his charisma modifier. I feel like there should be a rogue subclass that gives that if you want to, because it's already hard enough for, as a rogue, you need dexterity and constitution, and if you want to be a charisma heavy rogue, why not give them an unarmored defense with charisma?
I was tripped up because I was like, does that exist? It doesn't exist, right? That would be a good thing to have, though. That would be a great thing for a rogue. Speaking of, actually, this guy's got great rolled stats. His dex is 14, but he's got 20 charisma, 17 wisdom for some reason, and 15 int. Again, I would love this, but as a rogue, his stats are all over the place. But I think this would actually be a fun character to play because it's not in any way optimized for a rogue PC.
Yeah, he's got a little more hit dice than our other heroes. He has 20 as opposed to all the good guys have 16. So maybe he's got a few more ability score improvements.
Next up, we have Holga Kilgore, a member of the Uthgard Elk tribe. This is Michelle Rodriguez's character. She's a barbarian, of course.
I remember the elk being, if I remember, like Forgotten Realms campaign setting as being the most asshole barbarians of the various Uthgard tribes. I don't know if that's actually correct.
I don't know either. I don't remember enough about the various Uthgard clans, but I think that would be funny if it were true. Holga has pretty standard barbarian abilities, except she has a special magic weapon, a dark steel great axe, which grants her resistance to lightning damage, of all things.
That's kind of cool. That I can see that being
that's interesting.
Cinematic, as in you hold your axe and it grounds the incoming lightning strike. I might steal that for a magic weapon for my players.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Part of me wonders how much of this is working backwards, trying to...
It's all working backwards. There's no way these were written before the movie.
Yeah, no. Do you remember there was this series of Star Wars books that came out well before the prequels. And it was all about Darth Vader's glove, which the books posited was invincible, because how else would he block laser bolts with it?
Right, he had an invincible glove.
He had an invincible glove. Anyway,
which is just nerds looking at this and, not realizing that, for George Lucas or the various writers, the Force can be anything, right? You can do whatever you want with it. They're like, well, obviously it's not that. It's not the Force. It's this cool glove.
Right. Later, smarter, better nerds were like, yeah, of course that was a Force thing that Darth Vader was doing, but that's what this reminds me of, is that they're just like, okay, well, in the movie Holga blocks a lightning bolt, so how do we... it's because her great axe gives her resistance to lightning. That's still pretty cool, though. I as far as these things go, sometimes working backwards can be neat, and working with this in the system can help you create cool stuff. So she also can wrestle. She has a bonus action to wrestle, which allows a shove, which that would be a very cool thing, actually, for a barbarian or any fighter to be able to do. It is still way too hard to do any sort of combat maneuver. I'm assuming that this is something that happens quite frequently in the movie. Give barbarians the ability to wrestle, in my opinion.
Yeah, let them wrestle. She also has the ability to speak halfling, so we'll see if that comes up.
Oh, that's handy.
So yeah, we have no short species in our player characters. So far, we've seen 2 humans and a tiefling. The druid was a tiefling, but no shorties.
I guess the perspective technology that Peter Jackson used in the Lord of the Rings films has just been lost to history.
It's lost tech.
Nobody knows how to film in a way that makes actors appear shorter than they actually are.
I mean, it probably seems like
done.
too much trouble.
Yeah, but no, they're all humanoid sized. They're not all humans, but none of them are no shorties, no dwarves.
Right. Next, we've got Simon Almar, the descendant of Elminster. Simon's a real like signal name to be like, this motherfucker's a nerd. Like, shove him in a locker, right?
Yeah. This guy gives off big nerd energy for sure. I'm also like this. He can do a bunch of interesting things.
So he's labeled a half elf or a descendant of an elf and Elminster, and I love the idea of, if you typically say, okay, there's a nerd spellcaster, you're gonna be like, well, that's a wizard. He is a sorcerer, a wild magic sorcerer.
That's right.
Which is, I think, a great twist.
I think so too. Yeah, and the wild magic thing, again, just based on what I've seen on the trailers, I think that may actually be a part of the movie. He also has some special equipment. He's the only one so far, aside from the... Well, no, that's not true. We got the dark steel great axe, and we've got the poison on the crossbow. But Simon Almar actually has some named magical items. He's got a bag of holding. He's got some sending stones, and he's got a deathly token, which I guess lets him speak with dead. So that's cool.
Yeah. I think he's got Bigby's hand, which I believe is a 5th level spell. So yeah. And a token that lets him cast a spell that is normally I believe a cleric and a bard spell. So it should be it should be Edgin speaking with dead.
Well, sure, but he's also got this reaction, Sheltering Shield. When Simon or another creature he can see within 10 feet of himself would take damage, he conjures a shimmering 10-foot radius sphere of magical force centered on himself. Creatures inside the sphere have resistance to the damage that triggered this reaction. That's pretty cool. That's a very cinematic ability. You slam your staff into the ground and create a big bubble around you and your friends. That's neat. They should give that to other people.
Yeah,
that should be.
I love cinematic abilities like this. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he also has
what
you said, sending stones. So we'll see if those come up. Put a note. Do we see people talk with sending stones?
Yeah, put a pin in that. Okay, we've got Sophina, who is a wizard, a neutral evil. Neutral evil, also like Forge Fitzwilliam. I feel like one of these people should be chaotic evil. You know, I don't know if our true villain. And she's a red wizard of Fae. We haven't talked about this yet, but I do like that our what appears to be the big bad villain of the D&D movie are red wizards. That's a classic. That's a good one. I'm enthusiastic about what they're going to do with that.
Yeah, I mean the red wizards are, I think, one of the best villainous organizations in the entire Forgotten Realms campaign setting. They're evil wizards. They have their own magocracy. They have their own weird group spell casting. They're always scheming against one another and against the rest of the world. You can't go wrong here.
Now, Sophina is a properly decked out wizard. She can cast Time Stop. She can cast Finger of Death. She can cast Ivard's Black Tentacles.
Ooh.
She can cast Bigby's Hand, Resilient Sphere, Dimension Door. She's got the good ones. She's got the real flagship wizard spells. She knows what she's on about.
This character, as written so far, really reminds me of okay, let's put an actor in goth makeup and robes and make them the big bad. Do you remember the terrible first Suicide Squad movie where
Oh yeah,
Cara Delevingne plays, I think,
Cara Delevingne. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forgot. Much of that movie has just sort of like slid off of my brain, but I that's right. She was the villain in Suicide Squad, in the first Suicide Squad. And that's exactly what they've done here. I don't know.
Shadow and Bone. She was in Shadow and Bone. I remember.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I watched
that's
that.
Right.
Yeah,
I like Shadow and Bone.
Yeah.
Shadow and Bone is an entirely pleasant, teen magic fantasy. I shouldn't say teen. It's not just for teens, but it's
you can say it. It's okay that some things are made for young adults. You don't have to be ashamed.
Yeah. Anyway, no, Shadow and Bone was good. But yeah, she even like has a similar look as Cara Delevingne, but yeah, they've put her in a red wizard, shaved her head, given her goth makeup. She has a weird. Yeah, she can summon wraiths, which is pretty cool. And can do some kind of necrotic strike, which is neat.
Listen, as long as Daisy Head is better at acting, and I'm pretty sure she is, than Cara Delevingne, then we should be fine.
We should be fine. Brief aside, I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed that Cara Delevingne has somehow weaseled her way into being in so many like fantasy and science fiction properties by virtue of her uncle being friends with Nicolas Sarkozy or whatever like nepotism thing she's got going on. Because, I don't want to blame her specifically, but like, Valerian and 1,000 Planets, Carnival Row,
so bad.
Like she's just like in so many like fantasy things, and it's not her fault that they're bad, but it doesn't help, right? Like these are all things that might have been good, and are bad, and why can't she just ruin action movies like that? That seems fine. Like I don't know. Cast her as the romantic lead opposite The Rock, and leave us nerds alone, Cara Delevingne, I guess is what I'm saying.
They keep giving her roles where the film hinges on her being a really, really good actor. And, listen, you don't have to be a really, really good actor to be in movies, but there are certain roles that demand that you're good at acting. And,
right. If you're playing opposite Valerian in Valerian and 1,000 Planets in a Luc Besson film, you should probably be able to act. And if you are sort of like the key figure in a kind of weird, steampunk fantasy fairy world thing, and you're on every single, in every single episode and on every scene, you should be able to act. And Cara Delevingne cannot act.
I forgot why we're talking about her.
On.
She's not even in this film. Zinc Yendar, raised in the nation of Thay, swore an oath of devotion. So an oath of devotion paladin. This is Renee Jean Page's character.
He's got a little like Thayan tattoo on his forehead underneath his, in my opinion, really terrible, weird haircut, but that's okay. He's a very good looking man, so it doesn't matter that his hair is weird. And he's a paladin. He's a good guy. He's a lawful good. And he's got one really weird. He's got
the most cool action movie prop you could imagine. Yeah. Tell us about it.
Yeah. It's I would have called it something different. It's called a dagger sword.
Okay.
Right. So this is a basically like a long sword that can detach into a short sword and dagger with like a flourish as like a bonus action. And so yeah, this is actually extremely cool, right? Like, so you're fighting with your long sword, and then you do like a ka-chink, and then suddenly you're fighting, with two weapons, your short sword and your dagger. So he's got this dagger sword.
He also has an attack where Zinc magically detaches the long sword blade from its hilt, launching the blade at a creature. On a failed save, the target is impaled, takes piercing damage, and is knocked prone. At the end of the Current turn, the blade magically reattaches to the hilt. So he has a gun sword, actually.
I mean, here's the problem. This is just like so much cooler than anything a paladin can actually do in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, that's just unfortunate, right? Like, absolutely some people are going to see this movie and be like, I want to be a paladin with a dagger sword and I want to be able to like shoot my blade out. And some poor GM is going to have to be like, well, you can't, or they're gonna have to make up rules for this. I guess like maybe that. I mean,
this is a great magic of these. Yeah, magic weapon that you could make up, right?
Yeah, I guess this maybe like generously. That's the point of this release is that these are you can never use this in official play, but you could absolutely borrow bits and pieces of this for your home games. And the dagger sword, I gotta say, not balanced maybe, but it's cool.
I mean, it's a magic item. It doesn't have to be balanced.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, he basically gets like 2 special attacks with the dagger sword based on which form it's in, and which is pretty neat. Oh, it's pretty cool. I am interested to see. Here's the thing. I'm a big like fight scenes nerd, and so I'm very curious to see if the fight scenes in Honor Amongst Thieves are any good. So I love a good, fight choreography and good stunt coordination. So it sounds like there's some cool sword action in the movie, and I want to see what that looks like.
We just want to see some cool sword fights at the end of the day.
Isn't that all we want? Isn't that all we ever want?
All people want. There's Honor Among Thieves, our Thieves Gallery.
What do we think about this adventuring party as a whole, Matt?
Okay.
Like, like we've got, here's the thing. I'm not clear on, I'm guessing from the movie that this is not, obviously Forge, Fitzwilliam, and Sophina are not members of the party. And I'm guessing that of the other 5, there may be like some are part of it sometimes and not others, but we got a druid, a bard, a sorcerer, and a paladin, right? And a barbarian, right?
So that's
a pretty solid adventuring party, right?
Absolutely.
Able to take on any and all challenges, perhaps. It is interesting. Sorry, maybe it's not interesting. It's interesting to me that the core adventuring party does not include a rogue, because such a core part of the D&D gameplay mythology, right, is looking for and dismantling traps, right? In the first D&D movie, our main character is a rogue.
2 of our main characters.
That's right. 2 of the main characters are rogues. In the second D&D movie, you got a key character of a rogue, right? It feels like D&D when transferred to a cinematic universe insists upon having a sequence where traps are found and disarmed, and traps are a key part of any dungeon crawl experience, whether it's D&D or it's Indiana Jones or whatever. Now, your party does not need a rogue to not since the death of fine traps to actually dungeon crawl. But I think it's interesting that the Honor Among Thieves has decided that having a rogue is no longer an essential part of a Dungeons and Dragons adventuring party.
Well, I think the adventuring party, if we look at it from the sort of basic archetype of going back to the earliest D&D days of thief, fighting man, priest, and magic user, we have all those except with the more flavorful versions of it, right? So,
that's a good point.
A druid is more interesting than a cleric, a barbarian is more interesting than a fighter, etc., etc.
And a bard is technically was technically at one point a thief, right? Or thief-ish
sort of
type. I mean, it sort of. It fits the mold. But yeah, it's got everything that you need for an adventuring party. interestingly, again, to me, Zenk Yendar is challenge rating 10, and has substantially more hit points than everybody else in the adventuring party. I don't know why.
No, I mean, I think it's obviously he's the Gandalf of the party. He's not one of the player characters, but he shows up halfway through and adventures with them because he is a little more powerful.
I think that's probably correct. I think he is our, if not Gandalf, then, I don't know, maybe at least the Aragorn in that he's substantially more powerful than a lot of his peers. So, but yeah, I, for one, am excited to see the Thieves Gallery in action. I can't wait to see and write down and, take notes and be sure to indicate whenever something happens on screen that is impossible within Dungeons and Dragons rules as written, so that I can write a strongly worded letter to Hasbro about how upset I am.
That's right. If you're not watching this movie with a set of graph paper and one of those little pencils or pens that has a flashlight attached to it in the movie theater, if you're sitting there with your popcorn or your big soda, like, get out of here. You better be taking notes and complaining afterwards.
Yeah, I expect you all to write, if this is not up to your standards, much as Gary Gygax wrote to about the Conan the Barbarian movie. I expect you to critique every buckle that's out of place, every material that is inappropriate for the time period, and every lore and or continuity error that you can possibly identify. And
actually, this brings up a great point, Rob, which is that we've reached enough like fantasy or early modern Renaissance or medieval movies where people just wear like cool shit, no one wants to see in a fun action movie Matt Damon wearing like a weird Amish beard because it's what maybe a knight in 14th century France would wear. Like I love that, like, we've got fantasy clothes that just look like cool modern clothes. Like, it's just a cool leather jacket. Like, that's way better than someone wearing a fucking doublet or a tunic.
I could not agree more strongly. I have always hated this sort of like, and it's always like an incomplete attachment.
Oh yeah, because you're never gonna get there,
right? But like, no, that person has to be wearing a shitty doublet and conical helmet because that's what they had in 14th century Germany or whatever. And I'm like, no, let them wear something cool. Give them pauldrons. Give them big dumb pauldrons so they look cool. It doesn't matter that nobody ever had gigantic pauldrons or a cool jacket or neat bracers. Just who cares? They look cool. Let them look cool. It's a fantasy adventure.
Let
so
Chris
glad
Pine be sexy. Like, he's just wearing like a cool t-shirt, khakis, and a sweet leather jacket. That's awesome. We love that.
He's got a shirt that's open to show his chest hair and nice boots, and I'm like, great. That's cool. That don't make him wear a tunic, don't put him in like a Phrygian cap or whatever. Like, just like, let him have his like very obviously modern haircut.
The hair is always the problem, right? It's like guys' hair. It's like, what do we do with this? Do we go, do we go all the way? Or do we give them just a normal haircut? Yeah. What do we do with the hair?
I mean, here's the thing. If you, sorry, I'm gonna,
it's okay, Rob.
I'm sorry. If you've got like a, if you've got a proper, Southern, Mediterranean hairstyle, you can get away, with just like your natural hair, little, curls on top. But if you got long Northern European hair,
Rob's speaking from personal experience on the first one here.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to do hair phrenology here. I'm just saying, like, some things look better without a little bit of extra help. Like, you don't need modern hairstyling techniques if you're doing a a sword and sandal movie, because you just you cast a bunch of Italians and they look normal.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do anything else, then doing time period appropriate haircuts is going to make everyone look stupid, and so don't do it. I'm really glad we've moved beyond this. It was never having any sort of attachment to this was always like very, very silly, and like not very men look great with like long flowing locks. It's extremely, it's a narrow selection of the population.
No.
So let Chris Pine,
let him
Hugh
have
Grant
the Jonathan Edwards haircut from the 2008
That's
presidential election.
That's right. Give him the $1,000 haircut. Yeah. It's worth it. Okay, we've rambled enough about this nonsense. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes.
We'll include a link to this Thieves Gallery so you can check it out yourself. It's pretty interesting. It's fun. You heard all about it. And we will be talking about some other related things, and soon reviewing the movie itself, undoubtedly.
Yep. Stay tuned. We will head into the movie theaters in disguise. We will do one of those moves where we watch it 3 times. We'll just wait for the next showing, so we get every single detail for you, our listeners.
Thanks again for listening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.
Feeling everything.